Chapter 3. It's a Riot. Vetiver woke up a little past noon. The clock read 7:7345, so she went downstairs and checked the time with the desk clerk, an obese woman with a bored expression. "Nearly 12, the woman grunted, twisting around to look at the clock above her head. Her name tag read Serendipity. She smacked a wad of gray bubble gum before complaining, "Can't any kid read analog anymore?" "Yes," Vetiver said, "but I wasn't sure if the clock was right. I'm a tourist." "Oh." The woman raised a penciled-on eyebrow and set her newspaper down beside her coffee cup. "You can trust the clocks with hands better than the digital kind. Anything else I can help you with, dearie?" "She thinks you're loaded because you said you're a tourist," Top said. "Class profiling." "Yes, please. Do you have a continental breakfast this late?" The woman's lips compressed and congealed into a frown. "Hun, eating greatly increases your carbon footprint, and this microtel is all about environmental awareness. Go look at the bleeping sun if you want free nourishment." She unfolded her paper and snapped it up in front of her face. Vetiver hesitated a second, then sighed. She was hungry, but she couldn't be seen in public with her parents searching for her. She walked back to her room. "Hop," she said when they were inside, "I have plenty of money, and there are some great-smelling restaurants down the street. I need a disguise to go and eat, but I hardly packed any clothes. What should I do?" "Let me think a second." The room was Spartan, but was stocked with towels and the single blanket. Hop instructed Vetiver to gather up all the materials, then Vetiver sketched designs for possible disguises in the back of her journal. They cobbled together an outfit consisting of the yellow felt blanket with a hole cut in the middle for a poncho, a towel draped over her head and secured with a belt, and fingerless gloves made from her socks. Initially, Vetiver didn't like the idea of cutting up her socks. "It's not easy finding long, sturdy cotton stockings," she told Hop. "I had to search the consignment store a long time before finding these." "But you could still wear them afterwards. They'll just be toe socks." Vetiver stabbed finger holes in the end of the socks with her multi-tool, then put them on her arms. "They just look like socks." She frowned. "It's a disappointment. Oh, actually," she drew a flower on the back of each glove with her pen. "I think this is good enough disguise, and I'm really hungry. Let's go." Vetiver grabbed her bag, locked the door behind her, and walked down the hallway. She used her shinobi stealth as she walked through the lobby, and the woman didn't seem to notice her or the microtel blanket and towel that made up her disguise. Vetiver strode down the sidewalk, following a combination of blurry memory from last night and the delicious odors coming from a few blocks away. It wasn't long before she stood before a street lined with Asian bars and restaurants. After considering the options for several minutes, she felt faint, so she went to the nearest all-you-can-eat buffet. She remarked as she breathed in the umami aroma of MSG. Chimes hanging on the door tinkled as she entered, and a man in black and white waiter's uniform hurried over to seat her. Vetiver requested chopsticks and a pot of green tea. If the server was surprised by her strange outfit, he didn't show it. Vetiver grabbed a plate off the stack and made the rounds, appraising the selection with an educated glance. She felt at ease here. Part of it was the dim, anonymous lighting and the lack of other customers, and part of it was her long-standing appreciation for buffets of any kind. "Hop," she said, as she selected some shrimp wontons, "although some lessons from funeral potlucks and church conventions don't cover all buffets, many do. For example, avoid taking a lot of big rolls and breads. They fill you up too fast. Take a tiny bit of a lot of dishes instead of a lot of one thing. I think Bruce Lee said that. More importantly, never take the jello, no matter how good it looks initially." She balanced a tilapia patty on top of a spring roll. "Mother would freak out if she knew I was eating seafood. It's dangerous." When her plate was piled perilously high with food, Vetiver returned to the table. After bowing her head in silent grace, she brandished her chopsticks and began to dismantle her plate. She didn't pause until the waiter brought her tea. "Thank you," she said, wiping her mouth on a napkin. Vetiver poured some tea into a round, chipped cup, then leaned back on the red vinyl seat to digest for a moment. A police car drove by, but other than that, nothing moved outside the half-drawn blinds. This is a pretty quiet part of the city, Hop remarked. Yeah, especially since the rest of the city is either super crazy or super tense, Vetiver agreed, sipping her tea. It was too soon. She burned her tongue. Ow. Hop, what do you think would happen if you stuck your head, like the main part of your aura, I guess, into the TV in my room? They call those things cyber phantoms, and you're kind of a phantom, too. Maybe you could find a friend. No, definitely not. Even if they're the same kind of thing as me, I doubt we would be friends. They seem angry. Vetiver sipped her tea. It was just right. She made 2 more trips through the buffet and drank the entire pot of tea. Finished, she sighed as she tipped back the dregs. Ah, it's nice to be full. She didn't move to get up, staring at her empty cup instead. After a moment, Hop asked, Vetiver, it's one of my great fears. Huh? Dealing with people, especially when it comes to buying things. I'm preparing myself. She closed her eyes. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Out 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold empty 1, 2, 3, 4. In 1, 2. Vetiver, can we just go? This is called warrior breathing. It helps prepare a person for battle or some other stressful event. Let me be. After several minutes of warrior breathing, Vetiver stood up and walked to the front. She paid the cashier without incident, and he gave her an extra fortune cookie. She opened it as she walked outside. Her vision went stark blue in the bright light, and she squinted to read her fortune. My lucky numbers are 4, 15, 17, and 9.75. Take a moment to rethink a close relationship. Why are you looking at me like that? Here, this one can be your fortune. Vetiver cracked open the second one, but it was empty. It's kind of ominous, she remarked as she popped it into her mouth. Vetiver walked back to the microtel. She was prepared to sneak across the lobby again, but no one was at the desk, and she didn't meet anyone on her way back to her room. What's the plan now? Hop asked as Vetiver latched the door. I'm going to write in my journal and then read for a few hours until Matahari comes to pick us up, Vetiver said as she pulled her journal from her bag. I suppose you could watch TV. So we're joining the movement? Hop kept his voice calm. Yeah, I guess at least for tonight. Like Matahari said, they gave us a ride and arranged a place for us to sleep. Kind of do owe them. She opened her journal and began to write. Hop tried to read over her shoulder, but she shooed him away. He tried watching the TV, but it seemed less active during the daytime. It was silent besides a few short bursts of static. When Vetiver finished writing and pulled a book out of her bag, Hop asked to read it with her. The TV is too boring to watch till it's night. Fine. She cracked open a well-worn copy of Call of the Wild. How'd you learn to read, anyway? Hop had been reading ever since the first day he could remember. German, French, Esperanto, and English had never posed a problem, written or spoken. He hadn't really thought about it before. Who had taught him to read? Who had he been before he'd lost his memory? Was it possible he knew every language? I don't really know. Okay, you'll need to be absolutely silent now. They were at an intense part when, hours later, someone knocked on the door. Buck was in the hands of incompetent owners, and Hop thought he should really just kill them while they slept, but he was too good a dog for that. Vetiver's head snapped up, and she shook it a little to clear it. Uncle James always called it the reader's flinch, when you were so involved in a story and someone jolted you out of it. She hopped up, shoving her book back into her bag. Who's there? Me, Matahari answered. I hope you're ready. Just a second. Vetiver scurried around, snatching up her journal, toothbrush, and toe socks. She glanced around the room one more time to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything, then stepped out into the hallway. Ready, she told Matahari. The older girl nodded and led the way out of the microtel. Hop's mind was still in the wild Yukon as Vetiver swung her leg over the scooter seat. Buck really should just kill those people. There was a fresh dent in the fender that hadn't been there the night before. Matahari turned the key and they took off down a different labyrinth of alleyways this time. They passed dingy gray blocks of apartment buildings where garbage overflowed on the fissured streets, and grungy children looked up from their sidewalk chalk as a motor scooter passed. They were writing a slogan in pastel pink, the closest thing to red in a chalk box. Treat us like dogs and we will... One saluted Matahari as they zipped by. The apartments gave way to larger yards filled with abandoned swing sets and children's bikes. The houses gradually looked newer with less trash strewn around, and after making a few turns the scooter pulled up in the overgrown hideout driveway. People should start showing up pretty soon, Matahari said, as Vetiver climbed off. I have some stuff to do before tonight, so you'll be here alone for a while. Thank you for the ride and the stay at the microtel, Vetiver said. No problem. Matahari puttered out of the drive. Vetiver watched her go, then entered the hideout through the missing wall, and found a cleanish spot to sit on an overturned refrigerator. She ate 3 of the fruit cups and read more Call of the Wild. Dusk descended, painting the concrete structure ochre, then pink, then brooding purple. Movement members drifted in, some arrayed in fashionable grunge wear, but most in uniforms from private schools or work. The smarter ones wore plain black clothes with baklavas or bandanas to obscure their faces. The neighborhood street lamps were flickering on when Shay and Molotov showed up. Freedom over safety! Shay shouted as she strode inside. There were several assenting cheers, but the crowd seemed nervous to hop. Are we going to let the swine arrest, interrogate, shoot down any more innocent people? Are we going to let them oppress us and run our lives? Are we? Molotov made his way over to where Vetiver was sitting in an abandoned lawn chair, grinning as his comrades stirred up the hesitant crowd. Here you go, he said, handing Vetiver a black ski mask. We heard the police calling for someone of your description over the radio. This should keep you from getting too much attention. Vetiver slipped the mask over her face. The gathered young people yelled and chanted. Okay, quiet down for a second, Shay commanded. The plan is for the majority of you to head over to Market Street with Molotov. Molotov waved so everyone knew who he was. You'll be the diversionary force. Make a scene and take whatever looks good, while a select few accompany me on a tactical mission instead. Remember, your job is to loot, plunder, and thoroughly enjoy yourselves. Try to keep the swine occupied there as long as you can, so I have time to do my thing. I'm taking you, and you with me, she said, pointing at people. The group had grown past the capacity of the hideout and spilled onto the quiet suburban street. We need to get out there fast, before any curious swine show up. We'll split at the intersection with the bad camera, the one they ignore. Let's head out. The rioters squeezed out, shouting, fist-bumping, and comparing tools. Vetiver caught sight of crowbars, pipes, and wrenches. Are you sure you want me to come with? She asked Molotov, hurrying to keep sight of his sloped shoulders in the crowd. I'm small, even for my age, and I'm kind of weak. Molotov winked at her. Let me tell you a secret. He gestured to the band of urban guerrillas. These people here, they're psyched up right now. Who knows how many of them will actually stick around once the swine show up. But you're different. I can tell you've got a lot of heart. Plus, he laughed, pinching her cheek, you're such a cute mascot. Vetiver followed him into the dusk. The mob looked out of place as they wandered down the residential street. A girl walking nearby thrummed the metal pipe down a picket fence as she marched. The sound agitated Vetiver. Hop, I think this is the wrong thing to do. Her fellow protesters grew louder as they approached Audio City's heart. You're wrong, Hop answered. Can't you feel it? There's been a heaviness in the city since we got here, and it's finally lifting. We're helping make new history, Vetiver. Yeah, I think we're messing up. A boy in an impeccable school uniform trudged past, pushing a grocery cart full of bricks. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is the right one. I think the hardest thing might be leaving these people and figuring my own way back to Bleak Silver. Listen to the grown-up. I am all-knowing. You don't count as a grown-up, Vetiver argued, rolling her eyes. Shay and her small group split off from the main mob and scurried down a side street. Then Vetiver found herself on Market Street, a long blanket of asphalt sloping down to the wharves. Neon lights hummed in the show windows down the street. Most people in Audio City went home early, so only a few stragglers loitered near the businesses. What exactly are we supposed to do here? A goth boy in front of her turned around. Find something you want and take it. Or you could break things, too. He swatted a golden aluminum baseball bat into his palm. The mob spread out like a stain on white marble. Bystanders realized what was happening and fled. Hop felt a thrill at the tinkly splash of shattered glass. Have you ever been in a riot before? Vetiver asked. Not that I can remember, but it feels familiar. Store owners cast frantic shadows across display windows as they locked their doors and pulled blinds. Steel shutters descended, clattering over several storefronts. See anything you like? Vetiver hadn't noticed Molotov walk up behind her. Not really, she answered. The nearest building sold electronics. Excited voices flooded out, along with kids carrying boxes. On the other side of the street, rioters pried the shutters from a guitar shop window. Come right this way, then. Molotov led her down a block to a petite building crammed between a pharmacy and a thrift shop. The door was locked, but the lights were still on, illuminating a display of strawberry tarts, cream cheese danishes, sugar-coated brownies, and many other treats. Get on in, Molotov encouraged. At first, Vetiver tried kicking the glass door, but her foot bounced off with a squeak of rubber and a thrum of echoing glass. Molotov laughed. Here, try this. He handed her a fire extinguisher. She struck the glass, leaving a spidery dent. Put your whole arm into it. Vetiver swung with all her force, shattering the door and nearly falling into the jagged debris. Molotov caught her, then set her to work widening the hole. Soon it was big enough to get through, although Molotov had to duck a bit. Vetiver walked to the display case. The plump pastries seemed to stare into her eyes, hypnotizing her. What should I eat first? In Bleak Silver, the bakery had only sold bread, so Vetiver's solitary source of sugar had been the desserts at infrequent church potlucks. She had seen treats like this in recipe books at the library and drooled over the grease-stained pages. Just eat it all! Molotov stood by the cash register and beat it with something he'd pulled from his coat pocket. Vetiver was too mesmerized by the food to notice he had a gun. Are you sure this is okay? Vetiver turned up the bottom of her ski mask to expose her mouth. Yeah, eat as much as you possibly can. The box smashed open and Molotov scooped handfuls of cash off the counter. Vetiver slid the door of the case open. Wow! She lifted out a pudding-filled donut with raspberry jam on top. As she took a huge bite of it, vanilla filling oozed out of the corner of her mouth. Wow! She grabbed everything that looked good, taking a bite out of each pastry so she could try them all before she got too full. Hop looked outside through the picture window. Rioters had set fire to a building across the street. Furniture glowed, glass sparkled into nothingness, and the whole street danced with amber light. He was as fixated on the scene as Vetiver was on the pastries. In looting and destroying, he thought, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Vetiver paused to take a few settling breaths. She was nowhere near full capacity, but she knew from experience to pause and breathe during a challenging meal. Also, something was bothering her. Hop, do you hear that? By the time she'd finished the question, Hop noticed it too. The sound of breaking glass had intensified from up the street, and youthful shouts had morphed into harsh, angry yells. The police, maybe. Vetiver grabbed a jelly roll and stepped out of the shop. She nibbled at it as she picked her way over glass, cardboard, and assorted trash from overturned bins. It was hard to see very far, because the burning building nearby cast as much smoke as it did light. Vetiver could see figures struggling outside the guitar shop, but no flashing lights. It must be a few townspeople trying to shut us down. At most, some kind of neighborhood watch group, Hop deducted. Until the cops show up, we don't have a lot to worry about. Something plowed into the back of Vetiver's knees and she folded to the gritty sidewalk. Ow! Something hit her back. She tried to shield her head as she twisted around to get a look at her attacker. A heavy boot smashed into her side, flinging her over. Terrorists, anarchists, why do you mess everything up? We worked our butts off for this place, and now you're wrecking everything. Why'd you have to mess everything up, huh? It was a shower rod, Vetiver saw. A heavy, old-fashioned steel shower rod battered her arms, and the man on the other end was swinging it and yelling. It hurt. Ow! Vetiver's perception seemed to slow, or maybe skip. She couldn't track the rod with her eyes. It went right from being raised above the man's head to hitting her. I dropped my jelly roll. The man was still yelling. It seemed like he was swinging the shower rod harder. I could die, Vetiver realized. Hop tried to tell her something, but Vetiver couldn't concentrate because every time she caught a word, the pole hit her again and distracted her. She curled into a defensive ball, but the man kicked her again. Blood dripped into her eye from a cut on her forehead. She couldn't remember getting hit there. Maybe it was from glass on the ground. Mother and Father will be devastated. Cricket won't even know. And Uncle James... Vetiver! Vetiver, get up! Hop shouted at her, but it didn't seem like Vetiver could hear him. She wasn't even blocking the blows anymore, just covering her face. Blood smeared through her fingers. The man attacking her didn't seem to notice that she was just a little girl. He's really going to kill her, Hop thought. Vetiver, he yelled again. Then he was in her head. Uncle James! The flames were from a different fire, an earlier catastrophe in Vetiver's painful existence. And Uncle James was... Vetiver's body sprang up. Her hand caught the end of the shower rod in midair, and she whipped it from her attacker's hands with all her force, straining and tearing muscles in her right arm, then flung it away from them. The man froze for an instant, and Vetiver lunged nearly 5 feet into the air, launched off a light post, and stabbed her thumb into the man's eye socket with such force that he was thrown backward. Her face split into a grin, relishing this feeling, the familiar battle joy that had lain dormant. Hibernating. Blood and rubbery white chunks mushroomed around her thumb, and the man screamed, dropping to his knees and clutching his face. Vetiver's toe shot out and connected with his throat to shut him up. Then her knees and feet battered him to the ground. The man stopped trying to fight back. Amateur. Vetiver's heel came down on his rib cage. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Her shoes had sturdy rubber soles. Stop it! Stop! She screamed. Shut up! Don't distract me while I'm saving your... Just stop! Vetiver's torso leaned away, but her foot kept smashing down disobediently. Enough! Her whole body went limp, and she collapsed on the ground beside the injured man. Blurry spots swam in front of her eyes. Sir, are you all right? The man rasped. He looked over at her, revealing the hollow purple hole where his eye had been. Ugh! Vetiver choked. She forced herself to her feet and shambled away. Everything hurt, but she just wanted to get away from that empty cavern, from the memory of it. She tripped over a brick and caught herself, and oh no, that's pastry under my nail. It's not tissue. No, it can't be. She threw up. Then darkness. Vetiver came to gradually. Sounds echoed around her, but her eyes stung when she opened them. She waited a few heartbeats, then tried again. Though it seemed to be snowing, she was warm, warmer than she'd like to be. Someone was singing a carol, but the words didn't line up with the ones in her head. We all fall down, no matter who we are. Something refreshing and cold touched her temple. At the moment, it was the only thing that seemed real and concrete. She had hurt someone, she remembered. So don't look down, though it may seem far. Vetiver recognized the voice. Looking down, she also recognized the fuzzy sleeve and the fingerless leather glove wrapped around her to keep her upright. We all rise up like so many sparks. She reached up. The coldness was the barrel of a gun. Molotov? Her throat was grainy and her voice was almost inaudible. And one by one, blink out in the dark. Dim shapes wavered into sight through the snow, black silhouettes lit up by pink and blue pulsing lights, and Vetiver realized no, it wasn't snow, it was hot ash drifting from the sky. Things solidified in her mind. Molotov had a gun up to her head, and the police were holding their fire. Molotov, she whispered, what happened to the plan? He didn't answer. Instead, he shouted at the surrounding officers. Pretty good song, huh? I wrote it myself. Sure, the first 2 lines rhyme on the same word, but repetition has a place in poetry, don't you think? Release the hostage and we will not shoot. Vetiver looked up at Hop for an explanation. You kind of blacked out, but the police showed up sooner than anyone expected, and the shopkeepers retaliated. I think Molotov regrouped with Shay on the CB, but I was too far away to hear what they said. The plan must have changed, because after that, Molotov came over and picked you up. He's been using you as a meat shield. You swine must agree, Molotov yelled, because you guys won't stop repeating yourselves. Do you know... He paused to cough. I think it was Agatha Christie or someone who said you would have nothing to fear from the creative youth. The ones without an outlet would be the ones to bring you down. So which is it? Is my graffiti lacking in taste, or are you not afraid of us, or maybe it's that Christie was full of... The ground shuddered, knocking Molotov sideways. A second later, a blast of gritty air slammed down the street, and a clap of sound dulled Vetiver's hearing. Molotov scrambled up, releasing her. Drop the weapon! The police recovered just as quickly. Drop the weapon and we will not shoot! The voice from the loudspeaker sounded as shaken as Vetiver felt. What was that? She rasped. Hop, can you see? Something exploded. I think a building's on fire on the street over. This was probably a diversion then, Vetiver concluded. She swayed a few steps. Molotov, what do we do now? Molotov stood just a few yards away, laughing. The harsh sound ground into Vetiver's compromised eardrums. It deteriorated into coughing as he inhaled more smoke and ash. Vetiver could feel the hot sidewalk through the soles of her shoes. Drop the gun! Now that Molotov wasn't holding on to Vetiver, the police advanced. They were close enough they didn't need a loudspeaker. Molotov straightened up. He lifted the gun to his head. And one by one... Vetiver, don't look! Molotov! Vetiver ran toward him. She latched onto his coat. Stop! The cop snatched at Vetiver's arm, but she broke free. The gun twitched in his hand and bumped against his head. Click. Psych, I got you. That's not funny! Vetiver screamed. She felt like she would explode. She punched Molotov in the rib, getting in a few good ones before the police dragged her off him and slapped handcuffs on his wrist. Still, he laughed on. Radio messages crackled around, too fuzzy with static for Vetiver to understand. Someone raised his voice to recite over the buzz. You have the privilege to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the privilege to seek legal assistance if the state deems the situation appropriate. You may decide, at state-approved times, to exercise these privileges and to... Someone draped a weighted blanket over Vetiver's shoulders and asked her where she lived. What were her parents' names? Who? But then someone else shouted over the turmoil. We've got to clear out. The embassy is on fire and is spreading this way. We have orders to evacuate all residents. While the police's attention was diverted to the speaker, Molotov caught Vetiver's eye, then made a shooing motion with his foot. Get out of here, he mouthed. Vetiver hesitated. Come on, Hop urged. If we hang around, your parents will find us, and how are you going to explain this? Vetiver looked at Molotov one final time. He winked at her like everything was going to be okay. As the authorities split into groups to evacuate the nearby building, Vetiver slipped into a shadowed alley and limped away from the advancing crimson glow. One time, Vetiver remembered as they trudged through the smoke, my uncle told me we're going to a seaside picnic with my friend Cricket and Cricket's mom. He told me 3 days before, but then at the last minute something came up. He was too busy, so he had to cancel. But the weird part is, afterwards it felt like it had happened. I planned the whole day out, the sandwiches, the conversation, the shells Cricket and I would find on the beach. And I had such vivid plans for it, they turned into memories, even though I know it didn't happen. Vetiver turned around, looking past Hop at the city sleeping in ash. I really, really prefer having a plan. It's important to me. What's our plan now? What are we doing, Hop? West, Hop answered without hesitation. We're going west and we'll get to our destination. I promise. Vetiver resumed her trudge.